Attention, please. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey everybody, Sean Morris with Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit. The other day we were having a conversation in regards to a city councilman from the city of Cohoes, New York, that had many allegations against him by young men saying that he touches them when they don't want to be touched. One of those young men went to the police. They did an investigation, and the police found not enough evidence where they could do anything about this allegation. However, on December 22nd, just a few days ago, the police arrested Mr. Russell, the city council member, for forcibly touching another young man. We had Billy Smith, city councilman, and we had Timmy Thibodeau, who's a community reporter who knows more about you than you know about yourself, on the show to have some dialogue about this very disturbing situation. I just want to circle back around because we also were going to have Randy Knifka, who is, as many people know, my arch enemy in life. However, he's got some great insight because he's a past city council member. And then we're also going to go in and have some deep discussions about the state legislature and how they stole your money 3 days before Christmas. So let me bring in Randy Knifka. Randy, welcome to the show. And I do appreciate you coming on the show. And let me bring in Timmy Thibodeau, who was with us when we had the conversation about Russell. He's the city reporter. Can just follow up a little bit about the meeting that Billy Smith had just a couple days ago. So that's why I want to just kind of circle back to that. So Timmy, welcome to the show as well.
How you doing there, Sean?
I'm fantastic, better than I should be. I got Randy Knifka on. How much better can it be, right? So let me just kind of circle back real quick, Randy, and then I'm going to start with you, right? So Don was arrested. The council is made up of 6 different wards, 6 different council people. Don Russell represents the downtown city district, district number 2, or ward number 2, however you want to say it. And Billy Smith was really livid about the situation that was unfolding because there's a long history here. Look, I can't speak from facts, so I don't want to be factually saying anything. I can only tell you what was in the newspaper and what I seen from Mr. Thibodeau, who was able to pull up a police report. But Don Russell was arrested. The boy, I think, worked at his restaurant, or some of them worked at his restaurant. He owns 3 of them, hires young men. Seems that's where he kind of has the situation unfold with these young men. But Billy Smith had a meeting the following day after our podcast, and he said that he was going to put in a resolution that called on Don Russell to either resign, step aside, do something to remove himself, to either the court case was heard and there was a decision made by his peers or by the judge, or just to resign altogether, kind of like Cuomo did. There doesn't have to be a somebody go to jail, but when your name keeps coming up over and over and over and over about touching young men and you're a man of power, sometimes it's better to just get out. So Billy had that meeting. Do you know what happened at that meeting? Can you give me a little insight? Or if you don't know, I'll ask Timmy. But what was the insight of that meeting that they had?
Well, the insight is a whole lot of nothing. And first, Sean, thank you for having me on. Congratulations on your podcast. And I don't think Joe Rogan knows what he's in for. To be honest, he don't know what he's run up against you. I'll let him know. I'll send him a message and let him know what he's in for. But to answer your question, a whole lot of nothing. And Sean, the way I see this right now, and you hit the nail on the head. I don't want to get into the whole history with Donnie, and I've had individuals who this has happened to with Donnie, tell me their stories personally, and I think Timmy has, and now we have an arrest. So the way I see it, this is now less about Donnie and more about the mayor and the rest of the council and how they've responded or have chosen not to respond, right? which is silence. And
Yeah.
like you said, at the end of the day, it's not hard to look into a camera or look wherever and say, yeah, I think for the good of the city, Donnie should step aside. Enough is enough here. It's not just the young men. It's the fact that the ethics commission, convicted him of malfeasance, right, last year. I understand he has a hard time with taxes and loans, and the list goes on with Donnie. And I think they are in the rights. They're in their rights to say, you know what, enough is enough. And guess what? They can appoint somebody else for the second ward from the Democratic Party ranks, right? As you know, it's all Democrats,
Yeah.
right? And Cohoes, they can appoint somebody else in there.
Yeah.
But Sean, I think they don't. I think they don't because I think it looks bad on all of them. And I think they want to take the path of least resistance to say, hey, you know what? We're not just going to say anything and hope it just goes away. Well, it's not going to go away.
Clearly, they don't say nothing. Clearly, it's
No.
really disappointing. I don't know what's worse, touching the boys or having people in power just pretend it didn't happen. But there's 5 other members of the council. And my understanding is the mayor's known it for a long time. Now, I'm not going to rehash this whole show because we've already did a pretty extensive podcast about this. But I think you're right. I don't see anything happening. I don't see these councilmen stepping up and making any waves at all because they're all guys that just fall in line. And as I said 100 times, it's hard to do the right thing because sometimes you got to piss people off that you may like.
Yeah.
But the mayor of the city certainly should, after 4 months of knowing this and knowing other kids were going down to work there and him being a state trooper, he should have had the balls to get up to the podium and say, hey, I'm concerned. And Don should do something, whether we remove him or let me highlight what's happening so you don't send your 19-year-old son down there to work. If, in fact, this stuff is true, right? If it's not true, well, then the system will play out and he'll be found not guilty. But
Sean,
a lot of people.
You don't have to be convicted of a crime for there to be a crime victim. So there's a crime victim here in this city, right? There's a crime victim. And the mayor of the city pretty much brushed it aside as, well, it's a he said, and this and that. And this guy was the head of the state police. So if a young woman or man came to the state police and said they were a victim of a crime, is this how he would?
They did, and he quickly told me I should resign before I had a chance to be cleared of anything.
He called for you to resign before you had even pled or were found guilty or anything. He said, well, for the good of the city, the mayor should resign. But in this case, for the good of the city, Donnie should stay where he is.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how they listen. I understand politics better than anybody, and it's a game. It's a shit game, and there's a bunch of cowards involved in it, and everybody's looking out to protect their own little fiefdom. They don't ever want to do the right thing. I've said this a million times, Randy. The hardest thing to do is to be honest and tell the truth and take on the establishment when they need to be taken on. You did that. You took on the establishment. At the end, both of us are out of office.
Well, I think,
the end,
yeah. Sean, what's hard is at the time you like to think you're making the best decision at the time. Not to get into old history, and maybe we will on another show.
At another time, I'm sure.
But I thought, let me get my light back. I thought at the end of the day, I was making, I was doing what I thought was right, and it was hard. Let me tell you what, it was hard. It was real hard, and I was, at that time, I was a lonely guy on an island, literally and figuratively. And,
well, if they move the lines, you won't be on the island.
Well, they moved the lines, but I had people, I had people like Tim Thibodeau out there trying to get me at every turn, and other folks, and it was a very difficult time. But you know what, looking back, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm glad I took a stand as opposed to no stand.
Well, sometimes we take a stand, and it's only to take a stand, and I think that's horseshit. I think we shouldn't take a stance when we don't need to. What I'm saying is, in this particular case, when you know that this guy's had some allegations, you're the mayor of the city, a former state police commander, or whatever the title was, a bigwig. You should have notified the community, because what happens if somebody else went down there and the same thing happened? It's a slap in the face to everybody in the city. Timmy, let me just talk to you for a minute, right? You're good friends with Billy Smith, the city councilman that was on the show. Have you spoken to him about the results of that meeting?
Well, they had a executive session tonight, and they're all tight-lipped. basically the gist I'm getting from Billy is just more bullshit.
Yeah.
All right. Now tomorrow, which is Wednesday, I should have a copy of the complaint that was filed by the victim in this case, in which that record went to the court. And so I've been promised that by FOIL for tomorrow. So I'm going to know tomorrow if they provide it when the mayor first became aware of this, based on the date that was filed. So we don't know. We just know we know a date in which it happened and a date in which he was arrested.
But we do know that the mayor said in the newspaper in 2 articles that he was told about it by the police chief. So obviously he
Right.
knew about it well before December 22nd.
Sure.
This is
And
something that we'll circle back around again after you get that FOIL stuff, because I think it's that
Yeah.
important. Although, you
Yeah.
know, we do stories a lot on the state and the national level. I think it's important that Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit does a story whenever there's a story worthy of talking about it. And certainly this has that undertone without question.
Sean, this was concealed. This was a cover-up.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's no doubt.
and a cover-up of what I see as a yes vote for everything they put on the table all of the time. Okay,
The dirtiest
And
politics, Timmy, is
that's
local
it.
politics. Believe me, it's
that's
like a
just it.
bloodbath.
It's a yes vote, and we're not going to mess with that guaranteed yes vote.
Yeah,
Okay, so-
unfortunately, there's people paying the price for them to protect their
Sure.
own, but that's the nature of this business. It's a blood sport. They don't give a shit. They care about themselves. They don't care about you, and
Yeah.
you get what you elect, and this is
Yeah,
what
right.
we've unfortunately elected in the city. I want to now kind of spin the table to something else that's just really bothered the shit
Right.
out of me,
But
and I
real
think it's
quick,
got to
yeah.
bother most people, right?
Right. Real quickly, though, I got to
Go
tell
ahead.
you, I'm sitting here with my hands in my pocket because of all the feedback I got about tapping on the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you were going to get
So,
suspended. Just keep
that's
your hand.
right.
Don't be playing
So-
pocket pool over there either. I want you to behave yourself.
Right, I'm getting the feedback on Facebook. So I want to let you know out there, Harold Felt, my hands are in my pocket. No tapping.
As long as they're not in my pocket, you're okay, right?
it. Good enough.
But that's something that we're going to talk about: hands in somebody else's pocket, because that's the
Yeah.
reality of what's taking place, right?
Exactly.
Listen, this economy in this country is in the toilet bowl, right? People who have retired or are trying to retire can't. People who are working just minimum wage jobs, and there's so many of them, can't afford the basic things in life. And even if you're a middle class family that has 2 people working and your median income 60, 75, 80,000, you're struggling. Milk is
Damn
$5, right?
Right,
One
right.
bag at the local grocery store is $100. People are struggling. I was out Christmas shopping and I run into people. You know, I can't stop talking. I'm always talking to people. That's what I do. I talk to everybody, right? And I would hear people say, I'm just trying to buy one more gift. I got only a couple gifts. I couldn't get a whole bunch this year. Now, Christmas to me is not about the material things, but you know, that's what we've been born to do. We want to make other people happy. These people were like shopping in the dollar store, and it's no longer $1. It's $1.50 even in the dollar store. They're gonna have to change their name to the $1.50 store. That's how bad the economy is. If you're lucky to get a raise, you're going to get 2%. Usually when you get a raise for 2%, your insurance goes up by 6%. So you're really just losing a little less money, right?
Yeah.
But 3 days before Christmas, and Randy, he's going to see me get upset because that's what I do. My blood.
No,
boils.
not you. You don't get upset. Sean.
3 days before Christmas, the New York State Legislature, meaning the Assembly and the Senate, sneak into Albany on a special session that you and I pay for, right, with the tax dollars. And they're going to give themselves a raise. They're not giving themselves 2% raise, right? They're not giving themselves 3% raise. These dirty bastards gave themselves $32,000. $32,000. Now, I can walk outside my house and go down the street and go to the city and tell you that there's people who don't make $32,000 working full time. I can tell you that when I look outside today, the garbage men are out there freezing their asses off, okay? Just making 32 to start the job. They may get up to 40, 45, 50, which is an okay salary in this world today. But some of them out there throwing garbage for less than the raise that was taken by these people who usually have great wealth.
And Sean, they gave themselves a raise more than what my wife and I get combined in Social Security
Yeah, so what does that
for
tell
the
you?
year.
What does that tell you?
And what's the median income of a single person in Cohoes? It's about 31,000, 55,000 for a couple, right?
Yeah, so most families that live in this city,
Damn
who is
right.
represented by John McDonald, who was an assemblyman, who is a millionaire. He's not a
Right.
poor guy. He is a
That's
millionaire. One of the guys that raised his hand and took $32,000. John McDonald is a pharmacist, owned a very successful pharmacy. Here's a picture of him right here. Here's the guy that voted to take $32,000 raise, a multi-millionaire, owner of a pharmacy. I think he just sold it. I can only imagine the money he sold that for, because it was one of the busiest. And you know, John McDonald has got some baggage with him. He comes off like he's the altar boy. And if people wonder how much money he has, there was a situation at his pharmacy. Randy, you recall this, I'm sure, right? Where they did an audit, and the state came back and said, wait a minute, you don't have no records for $2.5 million worth of bills that you sent and cashed in with us. And John McDonald was ordered to pay back almost $2.5 million. But being a rich guy and having all kinds of political friends, he was running for the assembly. Cuomo, that clown, was part of his entourage. Ken Estreri, second most powerful guy in the state legislature, was in his side. He was able to take that $2 million, put it in his pocket, and yeah, he paid back $268,000. I'm trying to figure out how you and I and Randy can all collect $2 million and pay back $268,000. Nobody in the history has ever been able to have that happen and only pay back that little bit of money. So he's a multimillionaire giving himself a raise. If that doesn't bust your bubble, these people should be kicked out of office, but they won't be kicked out because they're all corrupt. So out of fucking principle, we should vote them out of office. I don't care if they're nice guys. Nice guy, my ass. You're starving, and he's throwing you a bone at 2%, and he's taking, 29, 30% raises. It's just, it makes me sick.
And Maris Pharmacy down there now, I grew up going there as a kid and everything, but Maris Pharmacy has become the de facto city hall. When you get these big shots come in the city, okay, whether it be Schumer, Clinton, Gillibrand, where do they go? They don't go to our city hall. They go in Maris Pharmacy.
That's because they're all rich and they're all just pompous assholes. Let me just, I want to just play this video.
Today, the state legislature in Albany voting on a bill that would make them the highest paid state lawmakers in the country.
With positions that are considered part-time. Morgan Mackay is joining us now. And Morgan, they still feel like they deserve a pay raise.
Stephen, Natasha, a $32,000 pay raise. That is the salary boost state lawmakers gave themselves today, which will go into effect at the start of next year. And taxpayers are paying for this trip up to Albany, the second special session this year.
It's Christmas in Albany. New York state lawmakers are giving themselves a 29% pay raise, bringing their total salary to $142,000 a year.
$42,000. $142,000 to do what? Because it's not a job. Randy, you know, because you worked up at the assembly. It is not a job. It is a title. It is a title that you get by getting elected by people. And then you go out there and you do anything you want. There's no hours. There's no time clock. There's no nothing. You get the best pension. You get the best benefits. You get better than everybody else that's working full-time jobs, throwing garbage, police, fire, DPW, code enforcement, all those people, Walmart, Target, wherever you work, you ain't making $142,000 with the best benefits, and you don't have to do a goddamn thing. But that's what the state of New York allows. It is not a job. It is a part-time title, and it is disgusting at the highest degree. Randy, you used to work at the assembly, right? Was it the assembly or the Senate?
The assembly.
Tell me what they do every day of the week for $142,000.
Well, so now we've begun session, right? So session runs the beginning of January, normally until early to mid-June, depending on if if they get a budget done on time. In recent years, they have been doing an on-time budget. So we'll say in recent years, they go from January to June. And session days usually run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, where the members have to be in Albany. They have to be in the chamber. They have to vote on legislation.
Well, let me just stop you there for a minute. What happens if they don't go? Do they get a paycheck?
They get a paycheck.
Somebody come knock at their door and say, we're suspending you, we're writing you up, you're going to be disciplined, or what are they going to do? Carl Hastings going to come with a fly swatter and smack him in the ass? I mean, come on.
Well, I guess technically the sergeant of arms could.
So the sergeant of arms,
go and
the same one that went to Mayor's Pharmacy and got the COVID-19 shot when the COVID-19 shot wasn't available to anybody, right? At least that's a rumor.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true.
But after session, they all go back to their districts, and what they do is is anybody's guess. But it is a position, right? It's not
So John McDonald just pulled the plug on Knifka. There goes his job at the assembly. But I give him some courage for stepping up and sharing that with us. I'm sure he'll be back. I'm sure it's. There you go. In and out. Where the hell are you going, Randy?
For $140,000, they're getting paid to avoid Randy Knifka.
Looks like John McDonald or Neil Breslin or somebody came to his house and pulled his plug out. But you know what? Why he's out and he's lost a little service or whatever happened, I don't know. If they clubbed him over the head. There you go. I thought John McDonald pulled your plug.
No, I think Timmy sent a sonic flare.
Or maybe somebody came to your house. But listen, let me just show you. So, Randy, you were telling us what the hell's going on. Basically, you and I can concur and Timmy concur. There's no job. There's nobody coming to get you when you don't show up for work.
Well, let me just quantify a couple other things too. There are some good people down there. I know.
Never said anything about good or bad.
Right, and there are some that do work very hard, and they go above and beyond for their constituents. And we'll leave it at that. Let me just add one other point. It was said that we have to put the raise in because most of the members come from quote downstate. Well, those members that not only downstate but Buffalo, so let's say they have to travel, that all gets reimbursed. Their gas, their miles, their hotel, and their food is all reimbursed by the taxpayers. So that's not an expense that those members have to incur, right? They're all getting that.
And per diem money, extra money, right?
And you get extra money for being a committee chair.
Yeah, you get
extra money. You get all kinds of extra. You get license plates, so you don't get You get parking,
so you
spots.
don't get pulled over. Yeah, Neil Breslin, he had a few of those.
Right. So at the end of the day,
license plates. Excuse me.
They're getting a lot more than just the salary, right?
Yeah.
So that's not really a valid argument to say, and then if the other argument say, if they're living in Manhattan, they can't afford to live in Manhattan. For less than $100,000. And I want to say, if they can't afford it, then don't run. Don't
run. Or you know what? Let's be fair. Let's say that in the interest of trying to be fair, let's pretend they're worth $40,000, right? Here's the bottom line. If you live in Albany, you get 35. If you live in Manhattan, we give you 55. You make a parity to make sure that the salary is equal to maybe the cost of living. It's expensive in Manhattan, but I'm with you. Don't run, or let's make this part-time title exactly what it is. Let's make sure you get enough to go out and have a beer and put gas in your car. None of these perks. No, we give them $148,000 when it comes to all the perks and everything else. Let me just show you this, because it really just it makes me think, holy shit, are we that foolish as people that we just vote for these morons? These are freaking morons that just stole your money. Listen to this lady. Her name is Kroger. I don't want to. I may have mispronounced it. Liz Kruger.
Liz Kruger.
I don't know if Mrs. Farley's watching this, but she was my English teacher. I didn't want to say it wrong. She'll be sending me text messages. Here's her justifying her job.
We did factor in an inflation rate. We're also, frankly, assuming that we will go many, many years again before we increase the salary based on the statistics of how infrequently we raise our salaries.
Money, we need. Show me the money. That's what it's all about. We deserve more money.
Can you imagine that lady standing up and having the balls to pretend that she's really trying to give you an answer of why they just robbed your bank account and stuffed their Christmas stocking full of your money, saying, well, we may not be able to give ourselves a raise for a long time. I'll tell you this, I was a fireman 20 years old. 20 years, I didn't give myself a raise, right? You don't just say, I'm a worker, I'll give myself a raise. That is bullshit. That is horseshit. That's every reason why, out of spite, they just spit in your face. I tell you something. If people had any balls, we would vote every one of those people out of office out of the principle that they think were that stupid and they stole your money. Timmy, when you worked, did you give yourself a raise?
Absolutely not.
Randy, when you worked, did you give yourself a raise?
No, you wouldn't give me one.
Bet your ass. I gave you a Christmas bonus. But on top of that, Timmy, I was a
should mail him
firefighter,
a
city
Christmas
host
card.
20 years. John McDonald, the guy that I just put up in the corner there, he was the mayor of the city. You know what he did? He did everything he could to break the union, cut our manning, take away our overtime, and ensure that we didn't have enough money to freaking live.
And
I'm
didn't he
putting
buy
out
a-
fires,
right.
and he's
Right.
making more money in an hour than I'm making in a week.
Right.
That's
And
the kind of guys they are.
And didn't he buy a fire truck that wouldn't fit in the city?
Well, yeah, there was a fire truck that they purchased that was too big for the city, but that's a whole
Right.
freaking other story. But
Well,
the
look at-
fact is,
here's
he
what
was
I
an
wanna tell you.
anti-union.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
anti-union. He became an assemblyman and became a union advocate.
Right.
They have no morals and they have no values and they don't have no principles because they'll do whatever they have to do to kiss the ass they have to kiss to keep getting elected. Because this is all about power. How much power do we have over the peasants? I'm going to be the mayor of the city and I'm going to break the union and take away all your benefits and make you pay more. And then I'm going to become an assemblyman and I'm going to steal $29,000 right in front of your freaking nose. And I'm not going to have to do anything. You know what he does? I see him at Stewart's. Now that I have my show, Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit, I'm waiting for him to walk in so I can pull out my camera and put him on video. Neil Breslin. Neil Breslin, I don't know if you guys know, but here's Neil, right? Neil's been involved in politics as long as I've been alive, okay? And if you have to worry about Neil Breslin, he's worth about $10 or $15 million. So why are these millionaires trying to justify stealing your money? How can a millionaire look you in the eyes, can say, hey, will you sign this petition to reelect John McDonald? Because, you know, he's done a good job. He's supported abortion up to 9 months. He took a $29,000 raise. He voted to do bail reform. He lets people get hit over the head with a fucking hammer and then get out of jail 5 minutes later. But then he'll pass a resolution that says, or a bill that says, if you're a felon, you got to immediately leave your office. You know what that was aimed at? That was aimed at me. That was aimed at me.
Yeah.
Because he was part of the hit job along with Randy up in that corner that came after me to try to destroy me. And then on top of that, here's a guy that should have been in jail for taking $2 million, who's got the $2 million stuffed in his other freaking sock. And nothing happens to these guys. And it's kind of, you know, jaw dropping when you think that the state and the people that represent it would take this kind of money. Let's just talk about the great job they've done, Timmy.
Here's what I want to say, though. This raise that they just gave themselves, that would have paid my mortgage and all of my taxes, my school, my city, my county, for the entire year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me give you a little. Let me just give you a
all.
little sad story. Now your taxes are going up because you're paying for these assholes to take a raise. I mean, that's the problem. Randy, you were part of the legislature. Do you think they're doing a good job? Bail reform, you know, taking away people's rights to own and bear arms in New York State. I'm a Democrat, but God, I like to think that I'm one with common sense. This bail reform is a nightmare. This raise the age is a nightmare. The crime going on in our state.
So Sean, so here's the problem, right? And whatever legislative body you want to talk about, whether it's the New York State or the Congress, when you poll the body as a whole, right? When you poll Congress or when you poll the New York State Legislature, the numbers are always down in the gutter, right? Here's the problem. When you poll your individual member, their numbers are actually quite good. So at the end of the day, while you, me, and Timmy, and most other normal people, I don't know if we're
I don't know how
normal, but
normal I am, but I get you. I know what
well,
you're saying.
but most people would look, and if you ask them, they would say, "Oh, those no good. Vote all the bums out, right?" But my guy, oh no, he's very good. He came to my son's little league game, and he presented, and there's always some little connection that they do to touch the heartstring of the voter and just say, "Oh, we like him, and he's okay," and yeah, but the rest of them are no good. So Sean, that's the problem, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely. Timmy Thibodeau has been saying this for a long time on his page, The Fifth Ward. Let me just give him a plug, right? So I think Timmy's what you would call a community reporter, right? He doesn't get paid to be a reporter, but he's the guy that digs into all the nonsense. He's got a page called the Fifth Ward, where everybody who hates him goes on and just kind of goes through the page, never leaves their names or sends them the information without a.
Yeah, I think I've been on that. I think he's had me on that page.
Yeah, I got a lot of trollers. Maybe I've been really debating whether I ought to unblock Randy.
I'm blocking him. You know what? Listen, I got to be honest with you. Randy was a friend of mine. He worked for me. I like to think that I was good to him. There was a situation that unfolded. I thought he did me really bad and really dirty, and I could hate him for the rest of my life. But you know what? If I ask God for forgiveness, then I got to give it as well. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to have him come on the podcast so we can talk about it, because I want everybody who watches my show to know the God's honest truth about really what happened to me, because I'm a good man. I may be a nut fuck, and I may speak my piece, and I may scream, bitch, and fight. But the things that they said I'm not. And the things that I end up having to accept were hard to swallow. But sometimes you have to make decisions that are best for your family. Well, but that's for another podcast. But let me just go back.
And Keeler has done something to me which I've not spoken about.
Yeah, he's another piece of shit in my eyes. I don't want to say that in the sense, but the stuff that they're doing to people.
Right.
Are not things that you do. Listen, I have never claimed to be a saint, right? All my demons I have shared. When I ran for politics, I said I had more fights in a Friday night than most people had in their life. I got a DWI. I had this happen to me. But I also delivered a baby. I also became a firefighter who got the highest award for going in through a burning building and dragging a person out and saving their life. Yeah, what am I going to do with my life? Bad check, good check, bad check, good check. That's nonsense, right? These people ain't got the courage to tell you what they really are, because everybody wants to think the clean-cut guy is the good guy and the big mouth guy is the bad guy. I'll tell you it's the complete opposite.
Sean, can I add one other thing in terms of the legislature? One of the big problems with the legislature, whether it's the assembly or the Senate, is how much power the leaders have. So in the assembly, you have the Speaker of the Assembly, who's Carl Heastie. Carl Heastie runs that assembly with, an iron fist. And
New York guy, New York City.
Bronx guy, a very quiet mannered guy, but a real political boss in the truest sense. But here's the problem. And before Carl Heastie, it was Shelley, right? Shelley Silver. And here's the problem with the amount of power they have. Not only do they have the power to, they can hold back your legislation. Yeah, they can restrict the budget items you can bring back. Budget items meaning money that is brought back to your district for a road or for a little league field or what have you. But they also have the power to determine where you park your car, which in Albany is anybody who's ever had to go to Albany is a very important thing. The size of your office, where your office is, the type of furniture that gets put in your office staff, your office budget, and even something so minuscule as whether or not the maintenance is going to come and change a light bulb in your office is all controlled by the Speaker of the Assembly. And when you're a member of the Assembly, especially a member of the Assembly for a number of years, all those little things, they may seem little to you and I, but to a member of the Assembly, they mean the world. So the problem is, whether it's John McDonald, whether it's whoever it is, it's very, very hard to go against the will of the Speaker. And at the end of the day, what the Speaker wants, the Speaker's going to get from that Democratic caucus. Then
get out. Don't run for that office. Get out. If you ain't got the balls to stand up and do the right thing, then get out. Because I've said this to you. I've said it to Timmy. I said it at the last podcast and the one before. It's really hard to do the right thing. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. If they're going to pay me $140,000 to tell Hasty that his policies of that are getting people hit over the head with a baseball bat suck, I'll take the bus to work. And it's, well, it's not a job. I'll take the bus to the assembly.
Yeah.
Right? If you have the balls to do the right thing, if you want to be a leader and get in it for the right reasons, then you don't worry about the power. I know. I fought the powers. I know what happens. At the end of the day, they're going to kill you. But you know what? Who cares? If you go into this business saying, I'm going to stay as long as I can till they throw me out, because once I tell the truth all the time, they're going to throw me out, then you go in it with your eyes wide open. But I don't want to hear the bullshit. I don't believe the bullshit, because what I do know is that they are powerful. They make all the rules. They do all the work.
Right.
You're a puppet. You collect the money, and you don't do a whole hell of a lot. But,
and Sean, at the end of the day, they did it. They did this raise because they could do it, and that's the bottom line. And at the end of the day, there's so much apathy. There's so much apathy out there.
Yep.
You know, people, and I don't blame. Look, at people are busy. They got 2 or 3 jobs. They got to get their kid to Little League. They got to take the garbage. People are busy. They don't have time to go sit in Albany and go and protest and picket and write letters. They just don't. Sean, they don't have time to do it.
No, but once a year they can go out and pull a lever. And
well,
John McDonald, he's lucky.
But they don't. But Sean, they don't even do that.
John McDonald didn't win by a whole hell of a lot. He was sweating. He was nervous. He thought he may go down the tubes, right? He's not the most popular guy, right? He gets along with everybody because he's rich. They're rich. They got tons of money, and people that are rich have a different life than guys like you and I, right? Timmy, I just want to tell you something, right? We had this conversation before. Randy said something, right? They come into their home districts and act like they're doing something, like they're going to dig into that stocking and pull out some of that $32,000 and give it to the Little League. But that's not what happens, right? They're coming to your city, cutting the ribbons in the park and saying, look at all the great shit I did. And it's your money. It's our money in the first place. They just took our money, put it somewhere, and then come back and gave us 50 cents on the dollar and said, look how great I am, right? That's what you've been bitching about forever.
And I get their flyers and their brochures mailed to me at the house. Tell me all the good things they do, but all the things that they don't do, okay, never hear about them, okay? And it just pisses me off.
Tell me what's good about the bail reform. Tell me what's good about raising the age.
I'll tell you what, let me tell you about the bail reform, because I have someone that works at the county jail. Those inmates sit in jail, they've got a tablet. Half of the Albany County Jail is a homeless shelter, okay? And our tax dollars pay for that. Anytime an inmate, he bangs his head on a jail cell or anything like that, 2 guards got to take him down to Albany Med, all right? These guys down there work there. They're always being mandated for overtime all the time. It's been going on for decades. Gil Ethier knows about it. He had a kid that went through it, okay? There's a never-ending solution to the problem. Bail reform, okay, has caused nothing but made the victims even more victims. Okay?
You're right. That's what I said. It made the victim more of a victim.
Sean, I was working in the assembly during bail reform, and I will say that the argument for bail reform was the following, and I actually thought it was a good argument, right? So let me just tell you what the argument was. The argument was that if a kid from the south end of Albany gets arrested, he don't have the resources or the money to post bail. He's going to sit in jail. If a young kid from Guilderland gets arrested for the same crime, not a violent crime, right? We'll just say theft of some kind, shoplifting, what have you. That young man, because he has the means, will be back home. And I said to myself, well, that sounds pretty good, right?
It makes sense.
Because that isn't fair. That isn't fair, because you're saying one is sitting in jail because he doesn't have the means, and another one is sitting home because he has the means. So I said, well, geez, that makes sense. So why don't we just get rid of cash bail? So the argument then became, well, why not just get rid of cash bail altogether and let judges be judges, right? So somehow along the way, a very solid argument, and Sean, I think you would agree with that argument, that there's an unfairness when it came to certain populations sitting in jail and other populations not sitting in jail for the same crime. So there was a valid argument there. The problem is how they went about it.
There may be a valid argument, but when you take an argument and you try to find a solution, and you got 150 mouths that don't know shit because back in their districts, they're not paying attention to crime. They're trying to figure out how to get reelected. And everybody's got their 2 cents in. And at the end of the day, it's Hasty that makes the decisions. It's all New York City. And it failed because they don't let judges make the decision.
There's
How about if you
there's not a generic solution to that problem.
No, judges have to make decisions.
They tried to do a one-size-fits-all for that problem, and it doesn't work.
And if you look at the crimes that they put into it, Randy, it is insane. I mean, you can have an arsonist, and he can start a fire and be out 15 minutes after he burned down the building. I was going to pull up the list because I brought it for this podcast. But the list is so long, and after I read it, I shook my head. Assaults, forcible touching, touching a woman, starting arson, fires, you name it. Some of the worst crimes, violent crimes. I don't give a shit if they don't think they're violent. Let me punch you upside your noggin and see if you think that's violent.
And not only bail reform, but raise the age. Don't forget raise the age. But I think of all people, David Soares, of all people, District Attorney of Albany County, very progressive, Sean, as you know. He said it best. He said, look, people may have been well-intentioned when it came to these quote-unquote criminal justice reforms. But at the end of the day, I got young men in Albany County out there shooting up, hijacking cars, or carjacking, the whole thing. And because of these reforms, I can't hold them. I have to remand them to family court. They're out on the street the very next day with the same guns in the same neighborhoods that are crying out for help because they're being terrorized. He's like, we got to do something here. This is crazy. So even people like David, who are very progressive, Democrats are saying this is out of control. Something's got to be done. But guess what, Sean? At the end of the day, Carl Heastie does not, and Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the majority leader of the Senate, they do not want to change these laws. They don't want to do it, and they're not going to do it.
Because they're morons, and they're also getting tons of money and campaign finance from organizations that make money off of crime. Listen, some of the richest people in the world got rich off of poverty, off of crime. Always off the government, right? The government is the one paying all these organizations. When I was in the legislature and we were talking about drug issues, right? I stood up and said, in the 10 years that I've been here, we spent billions, not millions, but billions of dollars trying to treat people with drug addiction that didn't want to be treated. So why are we continuing to spend that money? Why don't we draw a line in the sand and say, I'm sorry, some of you people have made the decision. You don't want help. No matter what we do, we can't help you. But there's a whole host of kids standing right behind you that if we start spending money on prevention and keeping them off the streets and giving them opportunities and teaching them jobs and skills and I know you can't be a substitute for families, but there's so many people without families, so they're out there running the streets. But let's do something with prevention. And you know who attacked me? The people who were making all the money on the other end. The people who were saying, no, we got to treat you 54 times before you decide that you don't want to do drugs no more. I'm sorry.
Sean, like you said, there's big money in it. There's big money in the drug treatment complex. We'll call it the industrial complex of drug treatment. There was millions of dollars, and the pharmaceutical industry.
As you know, I was the head of the county legislature. They would call me and say, oh my God, you can't do that. Oh my God, you can't do that. At the same time that they were trying to give more money for treatment for people that continued to fail. They were trying to cut money off of the providers who helped your baby learn how to speak when they're having speech therapy problems. It's just backwards. The whole government's backwards. This whole liberal bullshit. I'm a Democrat, always been a Democrat in Cohoes, New York. Timmy, we laughed about this, right? When you're born in Cohoes, they stamp your ass USDA Democrat, just like they do with a piece of beef, and that's what you are your whole life. I mean, that's the reality. But
you have to be a Democrat
they've lost
if you
their
want to
mind.
get something done. If you want to get something done, you got to be a Democrat. If you want something even faster, you got to be on the Democratic committee.
We are watching. We're watching the woke environment trying to change our history, knock down our statues. They want to throw you off the. You're right here in Cohoes. Before this whole woke thing started, I had Randy and this Steve Napier. Right, Steve Napier is an openly gay guy, and we had Nick DePaula come to our music hall. One of the funniest guys in the world, right? Funny bastard who picks on everybody, because every once in a while you got to be able to laugh at yourself. And it's not like they're looking at you going, you're this, you're that. It's in general, and it's a way to try to make people laugh. And he said queer. He said the word queer. Now, I don't know where he said it, but he said the word queer. He then said he apologized for it. But they wanted to block him from playing in the freaking music hall because he said queer. I said, well, he called me fat. Well, he didn't call me fat. He looked out and was making fat jokes. I felt like I was fat, so I said, he must be picking on me. So I had 2 more beers. I laughed my ass off. I went home and I said, maybe I'm fat. Who cares? It was fun. It was lighthearted. It was a way to laugh. Too many people are weak, wimpy, and take everything to heart.
You were marginalized. That's the key word.
I was marginalized. I went home and had a hamburger. Okay. We went out that night after the show. I had 3 burgers from Burger King. I sucked down 6 beers. I wasn't worried about what he called me. We were out having fun. The whole world is changing like that, Randy, right? Yeah. The whole world is getting screwed up. We now have to worry about schools teaching our kids about critical race theory, because in New York State, they're pushing that. We got to worry about whether a boy can say he's a girl and use the bathroom that your little daughter's in. We have to say there's sports, and because you perceive yourself as a woman, because you can't win in the men's sports, you're going to go and, outpace every girl who's out there trying to, who worked their whole lives to be at the top of their game, to win in sports, go to college, get a free ride, get an education. And now we have men dressing as women, taking away their ability to do that. The world is screwed up. I'm not anti-gay. I'm not anti-anything. If you recall, I was the one who passed the first transgender protection for transgenders
I was there.
In Albany County. They tried to pass it for 30 years. I got it passed. I understood that discriminating against people for whatever reason is wrong. But at the same time, I used to say to them, look at, you want to say that you're a woman and perceive yourself to be a woman? I don't really give a shit. Just let me know if I have too many beers and we go on a date, because I want to make sure I know that you're not.
You said something a little earlier. I don't know if it was correct. You mentioned the word liberal. I don't think liberalism is a bad thing. When I think of democratic liberalism, I think of Franklin Roosevelt. I think of Harry Truman. I think of Jack Kennedy.
I think of John McDonald, and I think of Libby Post, and I think of all these morons that are so far to the left that they're destroying our party.
But true democratic liberalism, I think, was embodied in those people. When you talk about Medicare, you talk about Medicaid, you talk about Social Security, you talk about all these things that came out of democratic liberalism. Now, Timmy may not. I think Timmy may be a true conservative, not to put words in Timmy's mouth. He may not believe in any of those. And he might not believe in any of those programs. But I think the problem.
But I'm older than the both of you too.
Right.
So grew up in a different era. Okay, so I am conservative.
But I
look,
think
I'm a conservative Democrat, Randy. Yeah. I always have. I always said, look, it's not my money that I'm spending, so I want to make sure that I'm spending it wisely. And I also don't want to tax people just because I can. When I was the mayor of the city,
I think you had a strong core belief in that vulnerable populations, especially seniors, kids, needed the protection of the government. Am I correct?
I think the government has a place, because when nobody else is doing it, somebody's got to step up, right?
I mean, like the nursing home. You were one of the biggest purporters to say no. We need a government nursing home, because a private nursing home was not going to be adequate to meet the needs of the seniors.
Well, they didn't care, because they're out to make money. When you're out to make money, see, it really comes down to the mission, right? I mean, I spent my whole 11 years there fighting to get a new nursing home built, and I got a phone call from the nursing home people, the advocates, Renee and all the Nancy and all those strong advocates for the nursing home, and said if it wasn't for you, they never would have built this nursing home. I mean, that I spent my whole 11 years fighting, because the oldest, the rich, the oldest, the poorest, the frailest, they weren't going in their nursing home if you had money. They were shipping you out of state. People were being separate. God wasn't separating people, but we were separating them from their family.
But Sean, that's what true democratic principles used to be. Now, like you said, now true democratic principles are all this woke craziness of defund the police and everybody's a racist and everything
Everybody.
is trans. You gotta
I got friends that are
little kids are being
right.
sent to hospitals and being having procedures done. It's just ghoulish and just bizarre.
Our federal government had the Department of the FBI, I believe, or I think it was the FBI. I don't want to say that for sure. But they were identifying parents who were going to school board meetings and fighting with the school board and saying they were domestic terrorists. I mean, how fucked up can it be? This is America. This is America. We are free. We have rights, and they're stealing them every single day. New York State, John McDonnell, Neil Breslin, Carl Hastie. If I'm a good guy, I should be able to have a gun. I'm not out shooting the people that when I have a gun, it's the bad guys shooting the people. How do you take away the bubble gum from the guy that never stuck it under the desk, right? Because you don't want people to stick it under the desk. The bottom line is, if bad people want to do bad things, they're going to do bad things. Guns don't kill people. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Guns just happen to be the weapon of choice, unfortunately. We just seen, these 4 people stabbed to death in their college dorm. Are we going to go after knives? We see people running down in a parade and killing people and running 50 people. Are we going to go after their cars? We need to work on mental health issues. People are crazy. The pressure in this world is crazy. You're being taught from a young age that you were born white, so you're a racist. I'm not a racist. I was born white. My buddy was born black. I wouldn't have known the difference between him and I when we were playing in the park unless somebody said he's a black kid and you're a white kid. Nobody really cares. You're not born racist, right? Mm-hmm. We're bred to be what we are. With a strong family value, you go to church, you end up growing up being Catholic because that's what your family taught you. You may get older and say, hey, I see things different now. But there was family structure, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Sean, the problem,
well,
not only is there family structure, but society is chosen to devalue the family.
They have.
They've chosen to devalue it to the point where families just don't even, not only don't they matter, but they're secondary to the individual.
Look at our school system has forgotten about reading, writing, and arithmetic. And our teachers are wonderful, and I love our teachers, right? But it's the national people. It's the state education, also run by these morons who just took a $32,000 raise. These morons, put together these boards by putting their people on them. You just look at the Cambridge School District, right? We have a state that has a failing epidemic. Our kids can't read. They can't do math. They're 8 and 10% below where we were just 10 years ago. This pandemic was a major screw up. But instead of worrying about how do we fix the problem with education, you know what we do? We throw out the test so nobody can tell that they're not educated because we have no way to determine how smart they are. But in the state of New York, the Department of Education is up in Cambridge spending all their resources fighting with them because they want them to take the freaking Indian logo off the back of the baseball jersey because that's more important than educating our kids.
But Sean, but you know what? Yeah, but you know what, Sean? Here's the thing. I think it's very easy to, I hate, I'll bring to blame poor John McDonnell's getting raked over the coals this podcast.
Yeah, you too. You too.
Look, it's very easy. It's very easy to blame politicians, but the great George Carlin said about politicians, he says, let me tell you something about politicians. Politicians come from American homes, American schools, and American families. They don't come from Mars. He says they're a reflection on us. And he said, you know what, maybe we're the problem, the people. Maybe it's not the politicians suck. Maybe the people suck. And you know what, Sean, maybe at the end of the day, the problem is all of us as a people, that maybe that these people are reflective of us, right?
Well, I don't buy that. I think George Carlin maybe.
Well, where do they come from?
It doesn't matter where they come from. It's what they end up being.
Well, they come from all of us. They come from us.
We all come from somewhere, right?
Right.
We all come from somewhere. What makes a guy stab a kid's 40 times in their bed and somebody else becomes a priest? It has nothing to do with, you have morals, you have values, you have corruption, and you get involved in these organizations like politics, and you get in it maybe for the right reasons. I want to make a difference. And then you get so sucked up into being a power pig and all the money and all the benefits, and you don't have to have a real job, and your life is great, and you don't want to lose that, right? So you end up being sucked into that, and you become that. You don't become what you were. You become what you've made yourself in that political arena. We're a pluralist society. There's all kinds of different organizations of people trying to achieve different things that mean a lot to them, right? I don't think it's the people. Here's the sad part. I think it's the opposite. I think the people don't pay attention. I think the people are too busy trying to live their lives. And we have become dependent on this political arena that should really just be doing a certain amount of things, and we've allowed them to do all the things. A school should be teaching kids and nothing else, but now they're social workers. Now they're determining whether your kid can whisper in your ear that they want a sex change at 9 years old. Now they're telling the kids without parents' approval that you're white. You no good son of a gun, you were born white, so therefore you're immediately a racist. That's the bullshit that we deal with. That's the political bullshit. This country is not a racist country like they want to make it out to be. There's racist people. There's haters of gays. There's haters of Jewish people. There's haters of fat people. There hate people that hate you. There's a host of people that hate people for a lot of reasons. Groups of people, religious values, right? That's never going to change because there's always people that harbor some kind of ill will towards somebody else. I don't know why. I'm not a psychiatrist, right? But I know that we had a black president that never would have happened without white people. In Albany County, we have black judges, black elected officials, and that could never happen without white people. If you hated a black person, you wouldn't be voting for them. I grew up with one thing that I had in my heart was love everybody. I didn't know racism. I went to school. Petey DeYoung was the guy who lived in our city. He was the first black kid in our city. He hung out with me and my brothers. He slept at my house all the time. I was never racist. So don't tell me because I was born white I was racist. And don't tell me that I owned a slave and somehow my tax dollars have to pay these reparations because people are crying out there that their grandparents that had grandparents 150 years ago had a slave and they deserve $250,000. That's fucked up. That's the problem with this country. Those people in politics are the ones pushing those agenda. Why, Randy? Because they need to have more pools of people that will vote for them to keep them in power. Think about it. I have 1,000 people that will vote for me all the time in the city calls. Let's just say I have 1,000 people. For whatever reason, they love me, they'll vote for me. That's my pool of people. How do I got to shake my head here. How do I get that 75 other people that I need? I don't know. All their parents like roses, so I'm going to get free roses out every day at the expense of Randy, who's paying for them, so I could suck those people in and go, oh, Sean bought us all roses. We love roses. Now we're on his side. That's what they're doing when they're catering to reparations, when they're catering to transgenders, when they're catering to these organizations that make money off crime. This doesn't happen because that's what these people were born to do. This happens because they want to stay in power, and the only way to stay in power is to take care of those people that weren't in your corner and bring them in, get all the money that you can, organize a new redistricting line so you can never be voted out. We'll talk about that on Timmy's podcast. But I disagree with that George Carlin theory, Randy, because I know too many people in politics that started out with the greatest intentions and they turned into nothing more than, political prostitutes that want $32,000 raises. These people shouldn't make more than the average worker. These should be part-time people that go to session, deliver our message, fight for us. That's not what happens.
Right.
They do everything that they want to do, and they don't care what we think, because at the end of the fucking day, people don't go out there and vote and make their voices heard. And John McDonnell and Neil Breslin and all of the other, 150 assembly people, take the Republicans out because they had the easy vote no, but take them out. Every single Democrat will knock on your door and look you in the eyes and try to justify how wonderful they have done in their career for you when all they've done is sucked you dry, taken away your rights, put your kids in dangerous positions, screwed up our schools, and the list goes on and on and on. And that's how I feel, and I think a lot of people feel the same way.
Yeah, that's why I'm moving to Florida.
Right.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you.
Well, look at also keep in mind right here in Cohoes, we're getting a whopping. At least I know I am getting a whopping $18.18 tax reduction this year. Meanwhile, while I get this little pittance of $18 for the year, I sit back and watch these state assemblymen take in what, 32,000.
Yeah, think about it, right? Think about
really pisses me off.
Think about these money whores, because that's what they are. Think about the John McDonald's, who's a millionaire. Think about Neil Breslin, who's a millionaire.
Yep.
Think about that senator, what's her name? Kruger.
Kruger.
Think about Miss Kruger up there telling you how she's justifying that she may not be able to give herself a raise for another 3 or 4 years. So we're going to take 30 years of raises and mix them all into one batch. Just political bullshit makes you sick, right? But can you imagine if they took, it's got to be $4 or $5 million. I don't know the number at the top of my head, but 150 times 32,000. Can you imagine if they came to the small cities and the big cities alike and said, you guys have such high property tax that we're taxing you out of your home. So we're going to give you property tax relief. Real property, not this 2% bullshit, real property tax relief. And we're going to do it, and it's going to cost about $32,000 per member here to do it for you. Yeah. But instead, we stuck it in our stocking and put it in our pocket. That's our property tax relief for the next 10 years. You could just figure out. I'd pay almost $7,000 to live in a shithole city that to tell you the truth, I want to move to Florida with you. Not with you, because I'd probably kill you while we're down there. But you know what I'm saying. I want to get out of here. Me and Randy would be fist fighting on the beach. I think I can still make it. I think I got one good one left, and I don't want to use it unless it's a top 3 contender.
Look, down there they got some golf courses. They've got some alligators nearby. Just go play golf with Randy.
Yeah. Well, look, we have alligators too. They're called assemblymen and senators, right? Yeah. I just want to try to wrap this up a little because Randy, when you're passionate about things. You really got to go out there and you gotta speak about them. You got to talk about them. You can't be afraid that, I'm going to run into John McDonald and Neil Breslin and Stewart's and they're going to be mad because I criticized them, because I am criticizing them. I will give them their shake when they deserve the fair shake. I will. If they do something good, I'll say, that was pretty good. I don't say that when they come to the city and go, we're giving you a grant for $1.3 million. No shit, it's my money. Thank you for giving our money back. Our music hall wouldn't have the windows falling out if you didn't take so much money in taxes from us. We would have been able to devote some of that to the beautiful structures we have. But instead, they come in on their horse. Brum, brum, brum. Hey, I'm giving you $2 million. Oh, by the way, I'm also, going to let somebody hit your kid over the head with a hammer and throw him in the subway. Don't worry about that. It only happens a few times a year. Isn't that what the mayor of New York said? That doesn't happen that much. Like 1 time's not enough. 10 times is not enough. They're out of touch. They don't live in the same world we live in. They started in this world, but they live in their own fiefdom now. They get free parking down in Albany when most people can't park. They get their little license plate that says, well, I started out, I was 140th. Now I'm 59th. Look at me. I'm important. The benefits, the health care, the retirement. I'll use John McDonald. If he retires, once he hits 25 years, it's probably 20, but let's just say he does 25 years in the government between the mayor and this. He's got to get a pension about $80,000. Most people will never make $80,000.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion John McDonald will not be coming on this podcast anytime soon.
Well, I'm going to invite him. I certainly will invite him. I mean, look he's criticized me. I criticize him. But I also have done good things. Look he's recognized me for the good things I've done. I recognize the good things that he's done. That doesn't mean that if you kiss me today and then punch me tomorrow, I'm not going to swing back, right? I'm swinging back because I'm sitting home trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for the next thing that I want to do because I have to budget my money. And these guys just took a raise bigger than some of the firefighters' pensions that I know that risk their
Just a
lives,
vote.
or the
Just a vote.
military
Yep.
that risk their lives, or the police that risk their lives, and even worse now because they put police in a horrible position with their policies, but they're taking bigger pensions home than some of them. It's a disgrace, and I'm going to say it loud, and I'm going to say it proud. Just out of principle, every single one of these bastards should be voted out of office. Let them take their $32,000 this year. Let them take it. Is it next year when re-election is up? And send them packing with their $32,000 because they don't deserve to represent you because they're out of touch with you, brother. They have no clue what you're going through.
I agree.
They're millionaires to start with. They shouldn't even take a salary when you have $10 million, right? You shouldn't take a salary when you have $5 million from tax paper. But Neil Brunson has got at least $5 million. His wife's probably got double that. John McDonald's a millionaire. I'm sure many of the assembly people are millionaires. Congressmen and senators, I don't know. They all go into a business that is a public salary and leave with $25 million in the bank. I don't know how they do that. God forbid you put a $500 check accidentally into your political account because they'll lock you up. But these people are thieves right in front of the eyes of the public, and nobody says a word, you know. And I think everybody has got to be pissed about it. And if this doesn't piss you off, I'm packing it in because nothing will piss you off. If stealing your money doesn't just piss you off to there's no where your head wants to explode, and you don't care, if it doesn't do that to you, there's no sense of having truth, lies, and political bullshit because it's meaningless. These thieves get away with it, and there's nothing that's going to be done. But listen, I had a great time having some conversation with you guys. Timmy, I'm going to look forward to coming on your podcast. Timmy's got a podcast. Let me just, Timmy, why don't you just tell us what your podcast is?
Basically, it's the Fifth Ward page. And what I want to do is a bit differently. I want to reach out to people in Cohoes itself. That's where my main focus is. And I want to have the general public, okay, the average guy in the street, come on and on my podcast and say what they think.
Yeah, I think it's great. Local podcasts are great. You know, I think the great thing about Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit is that we've made a commitment that there's nothing that we won't talk about. And it doesn't matter if it's, we've had comedians on, and we'll have more comedians on. We had people who died and went to hell and told us about their story. We had some of the, we had people that were radio shock jocks that came on and talked about their career. We had politicians that came on and talked about. So there's nothing off limits. But I think it's great. I think it's great when you have small, little, intimate. And I'd love to be on there to talk about the redistricting like you asked me. Randy, listen, I think you have a lot of courage to stand up and talk about what the reality is in the state government.
Well, I'm in an undisclosed bunker here. And
so wasn't Kevin McCashin when he came on my show. Everybody's hiding in the bunker.
But you got a real squeaky chair, Randy.
Well, that's all right.
Squeaking throughout the whole.
Well, Timmy, you can buy me a new. If you're going to buy me a new chair, I'll go on your podcast.
Well, John McDonald will give you $15,000 of his 32.
I'm going to go.
He doesn't need it.
I'm going to go ask John for some money.
I'm waiting for Harold Felt to come on and say your chair squeaks.
Listen, it's not just. Let me not just pick on the assemblymen and the senators. What they did is egregious. It makes me sick. What also makes me sick is when somebody who has a lot of money tries to destroy those who are trying to have a basic set of standards like firefighters. The current mayor of the city of Cohoes, right? $100,000 pension, $100,000 pension, $80,000 salary, making $180,000, and he's trying to take away the benefits, increase the health care, and diminish the value of the dollar for the firefighters in the city. So they're all hypocrites. They all take for themselves and never balk. And then they get in the position where they have power and they try to hurt other people. They're not taking it because the city can't afford it. The city's in pretty good shape. I left it with almost 4 years of zeros. We left it with the biggest rainy day fund it's ever had, Randy, correct? So the city was in really strong position. And then this guy who's running the city gets millions of dollars in free money from the federal government for COVID, that they can do. I mean, I wish somebody dropped $2 million when I was the mayor. Holy shit, we could have done a lot of great things. But the moral of the story is why these crooks on this side, the assembly and the senators, are stealing the money, taking raises. The other rich guy who has a humongous house, $100,000 a year pension, and an $80,000 salary, great health care, great benefits, free for the rest of his life, is going after the firefighters and the little guys in the city to give up all their benefits, not because they need to, but because they can. Randy, you said it earlier in the show. They did it because they can. That's what they're doing right now on all facets. They're doing it because they can, and nobody can stop them. I hope Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit fires you up a little, puts a little fire under your ass. And I hope next year you remember the names of these people, and we'll have a podcast before Election Day so that you can say, I may like him, may be a nice guy, but I'm voting him out of office because I'm dying for a few bucks, and they just took $32,000 of my taxpayer money. In the end, somehow, maybe not today, you will pay for it. You will pay more for it. It doesn't have to be today, but there'll be a day that when you're paying more, it's to fund these guys' $32,000 raises. And don't believe a word they tell you when they say, oh, the trade-off was we have to give up our outside income. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. These guys like Phil
Can
Steck.
you swear on this show?
Yeah, you certainly can. Phil Steck, $400,000 or something he makes. John McDonald, I don't know what he's making as a pharmacist. Neil Burns, I don't know what they all make, but many of them are making, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. They're not giving it up. And if they come to you and tell you that they're giving it up, they're bullshitting. They're lying to you. They're just going to come up with some kind of scheme, some kind of way they're changing the wording and say it's not income, or they're going to have a corporation where they only take what they can and then they pay their wives or their husbands the additional money for running the corporation. There'll be a way that their family structure and their salary isn't going down. So when they knock on the door and go, man, I had to give up my outside salary, I call the bullshit. Randy got hit over the head by John McDonald again, who snuck into his house. And don't let them fool you, Timmy, because they're not taking their outside income.
Yeah. Well, look at that. I want to thank you for having me on, and it was a good discussion. And Randy's back.
I don't know what Randy's doing. He's in the bunker, so maybe.
Well, yeah, it's a secure bunker.
Secure bunker. It doesn't have great power.
It's probably under.
This is a very.
Listen, this was a great podcast. I really enjoyed myself. We talked about some real important things. We exposed New York State for what they really are.
Yeah.
Randy Knifka, again, one of my arch enemies.
Sean, I'll see you in Florida. I'll see you on the beach.
Yeah, and all this stuff won't matter.
I'll buy you a pina colada. And
I don't drink pina coladas, but I'll have a glass of bourbon, all right?
All right.
I'll have a glass of bourbon, but I appreciate you coming on, Randy, and I appreciate you sharing your insight. Timmy, I look forward to coming on your podcast, and we'll talk about some local stuff. And until the next time, this is Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit. Be safe. And
you've been listening to Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit. Sick and tired of all the stuffy podcasts? We wanted to create something real, something raw, where there are no limits. Sean has held political office for 20 years, been a professional firefighter, and been through hell and back. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. See you next time on Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit.